In this segment, we'll review some of the basic operating techniques for the Caterpillar PM200 cold planer. Remember, you should always perform the machine walk-around inspection and daily maintenance checks before starting the engine and using any of the machine controls. If you have not already viewed those sections of this presentation, especially how to check oil and fluid levels, you may wish to do so before viewing this section. Let's start by looking at the procedure to move the PM200. In this example, the PM200 is parked with the rotor lowered to the ground and the secondary conveyor folded. You want to move the PM200 to a position where you're going to start work. First, let's unfold the conveyor. Turn the engine start switch on the dashboard to the on position, but do not start the engine using the main engine start switch. Instead, open the left rear ground control panel. Make sure the engine stop switch is pulled out to the off position, and start the engine using the remote engine start switch. Move to the front left ground control panel and hold up the secondary conveyor folding switch. Only certain switches, like the conveyor folding switch, are enabled when the remote engine start switch is used to start the engine. The secondary conveyor folds approximately in half to reduce the length of the PM200 for transport or for storage. Once the conveyor is fully extended, lower it close to the ground level. Then secure the secondary conveyor by installing the pins on each side of the conveyor frame. Once you have installed both pins, stop the engine by turning the remote engine switch to the off position and depressing the engine stop switch to the stop position. Then, pull out the switch to the on position. Next, move to the operator's platform and start the engine using the dashboard engine start switch. Set the engine speed control to manual. While the engine is warming up, you can check the monitoring system display to see if there are any fault messages and the system indicators to see if there are problems in any of the machine systems. Use the upper engine speed control button to increase the engine speed. Controls are the most responsive when the engine is set at high idle. Turn the electric circuit's enable switch clockwise to the enable position. All electric circuits will be enabled. The indicator light will illuminate and the switch will return to the center position. Finally, move the on standby switch to the right. This is the on mode. To raise the PM200 off the ground, move the main column control lever to the right. All 4 columns will rise. As the machine frame rises, the rotor will go up too. When the side panels are no longer contacting the ground, the column height is sufficient to move the PM200. Pull up on the parking brake switch to release the parking brake. Turn the machine speed selector to the center position or low speed range if you're moving a short distance. If you're moving the PM200 a longer distance, select the high speed range. Depress the forward reverse switch on top of the propel lever and move the propel lever forward to move forward. The farther you move the propel lever from the neutral position, the higher the machine speed. Maximum speed in the low speed range is 38 meters or 125 feet per minute. Maximum speed in the high range is 5.9 kilometers or 3.5 miles per hour. To stop the PM200, return the propel lever to the neutral position. To move in reverse, depress the forward reverse switch and move the propel lever rearward. The backup alarm will sound when the propel lever is in the reverse direction and will stop when the propel lever is returned to neutral. Use either steering wheel to steer the PM200. Choose the side that gives you the best visibility. You can select from a variety of steering options. The steering mode selector and other steering controls are grouped on the left side of the dashboard. When the steering mode selector is turned to the left, the steering wheel controls only the angle of the front tracks. When the steering mode selector is moved to the right, the steering wheel controls the position of both the front and rear tracks. When the steering wheel is turned, the front and rear tracks turn in the same direction, so the PM200 moves sideways. This is called crab steering, and you would normally use this steering mode to help position the PM200 at the start of a cut. If you turn the steering mode selector back to the left, the rear tracks will return to the straight-ahead position. When the steering mode selector is turned to the center, the steering wheel again controls the position of both front and rear tracks, but this time, when the steering wheel is turned, the tracks turn in opposite directions to reduce the turning radius. Coordinated steering is useful when turning around in confined areas. Again, if you turn the steering mode selector back to the left, the rear tracks will return to the straight-ahead position. A separate control is the rear steering lever. The rear steering lever can be used in conjunction with the front track steering to reduce the turning radius or to move the PM200 sideways. When the rear steering lever is released, the rear tracks return to the straight-ahead position. The rear track centering control can be used to adjust the center of the steering angle for the rear tracks. Turn the dial either left or right to center the rear tracks. If you need to change the maximum turning angle of the rear tracks, you can select the steering angle mode. The normal rear track steering angle is the right position. To reduce the maximum steering angle, turn the switch to the left. When you first start operating the PM200, it is a good idea to practice using the steering controls, so you get a good sense of how the steering system responds. Find a level, open area and practice using the various steering modes. You need to be familiar with other machine controls before starting to work with the PM200. For example, you should practice using the conveyor system controls. The conveyor mode selector is at the bottom right of the dashboard. If the selector is in the center position, the conveyors are turned off. If the selector is turned clockwise, the conveyors are in the automatic mode and depend on the position of the on standby switch. When the selector is turned counterclockwise to the manual position, the conveyors will start. You can adjust the speed of the conveyors for efficient material discharge by turning the conveyor speed dial. Turn clockwise to increase belt speed. Turn counterclockwise to decrease belt speed. If you need to reverse belt direction temporarily, turn the conveyor reverse switch clockwise. Only reverse belt direction for short periods to loosen jammed material. When you release the switch, the belt will resume forward rotation. There are secondary conveyor control levers on both sides of the dashboard. Move the lever down and the conveyor lowers. Move the lever up and the conveyor rises. When loading trucks, you should be careful to avoid contacting truck beds, so keep an eye on conveyor height. You can swing the conveyor left or right up to 48 degrees from center to load trucks directly in front of the PM200 or to load trucks positioned to the left or to the right. Before starting to cut pavement with the PM200, be sure you know all the features of the water spray system. The water spray system switch is on the dashboard. When the switch is in the center position, the water spray system is off. When the switch is turned counterclockwise to the manual position, the water spray system runs continuously as long as there is water in the tank. Water is used to cool the cutter bits and reduce the dust produced by the milling operation. Depending on the machine options, there are 1 or 2 spray bars with nozzles inside the rotor housing, in front of the rotor housing, and over the primary conveyor. Turn the water spray switch clockwise to put the system in the automatic mode. In the automatic mode, the water spray system will turn on and off according to the position of the on standby switch. You also have to make sure that all manual valves are open. Depending on the machine configuration, there will be 1 or 2 valves located at ground level on the left side of the PM200. The valves are open when the handle is parallel to the hose and shut when the handle is perpendicular to the hose. To engage the rotor, use the rotor control switch on the dashboard. This is a 2-position switch. Turn the switch clockwise to engage the rotor. After the rotor control switch is turned to the on position, the rotor brake will release. The belt will come into tension, and the rotor will turn freely. It takes about 5 to 6 seconds for the clutch to engage and for the rotor to come up to speed. If the engine speed is at high idle, it will automatically decrease when the rotor engagement sequence starts. The rotor can be engaged as long as the mold board is not raised, the parking brake is engaged, the rotor is raised above the surface of the pavement, and the on standby switch is in the on position. When the PM200 is cutting pavement, the mold board must be lowered to help retain material inside the rotor housing. The mold board selector should be in the float position. The mold board pressure can be regulated from the dashboard, but is more commonly regulated from ground level. Increase or decrease mold board pressure to help clean the milled surface. Change pressure in small increments. Too much pressure can cause the tracks to slip and can cause excessive wear on the mold board. You'll also need to adjust the height of the anti-slab device when cutting pavement. The anti-slab device, located under the first stage conveyor in front of the rotor housing, helps prevent pavement from breaking up in slabs in front of the rotor. The position of the anti-slab device can be adjusted from all ground control panels or from the dashboard. You can raise the anti-slab device and lock it above the pavement, or you can allow it to float on the pavement. There are side panels on either side of the rotor housing. Side panel control switches are located on the ground control panels. You can raise a side panel momentarily, or you can lock the side panel in a raised position to check the height of the rotor on that side of the machine. While the PM200 is cutting pavement, the side panels float on the pavement. To allow the side panel to float on the pavement, cycle the switch from float to raise and then back to the float position. The height of the rotor can be adjusted manually using the column height controls or automatically using the PM200 grade and slope control system. The height of the rotor determines the depth of the cut. Let's review the basic steps for preparing the PM200 to work using automatic grade control. Grade controllers can be installed on either side of the main operator's console or at ground level on the right and left ground level control stations. Cables from the controllers are connected to the right and left control units at the rear of the machine. Grade sensors are installed on either side in line with the center of the rotor. The automatic controls can be configured in several ways on the PM200. In this instance, the grade sensor is connected by a wire to the left side panel that floats on the grade that is being milled. Select the configuration that is suitable for the application. The machine is parked on a flat and level surface with the parking brake engaged. So start the engine and allow the engine to warm up at low idle for at least 5 minutes. turn the electric circuit's enable switch to the on position and the on standby switch to the on position. Turn the elevation control mode selector to the auto position. Also, make sure that the rear column manual raise switch is in the off position. At ground level, open the water supply valve. Turn the power on for both grade controllers. The controller will go through a startup sequence, and the display window will show either a grade or slope symbol and a sequence of numbers. Be sure to put both controllers in the grade control mode. The controllers should be in the manual mode, so make sure that the auto lights are not illuminated. With the engine at low idle, turn the rotor switch to the on position. When the rotor is engaged, increase engine RPM to high idle. Lower the rear of the PM200 using the rear column's elevation switch. Lower the rear until the rear column height indicator reads 0. Then, use the right and left front column elevation switches to lower the front of the PM200 until the side panels just touch the pavement. Raise the side panel on one side of the rotor housing and lock the panel up so you can see the end of the rotor. Using the jog button on the controller for that side, slowly lower the front of the PM200 until the bits on the end of the rotor are lightly scratching the pavement. Put the side panel switch in the float position and verify that the entire length of the side panel contacts the pavement. Now move to the grade controller for that side. Push and hold the survey button until you hear 2 beeps. The green on grade bar should illuminate. Push and hold the set button. Turn the grade adjustment knob until 0 shows in the controller display. The rotor height for this side of the machine is now calibrated to 0. Put that controller in the auto mode. That side of the machine will now stay at the calibrated height while you move to the other side and repeat the 0 calibration sequence for that side. This completes the segment on basic machine operation. Remember, the PM200 can be set up for a variety of applications. Always analyze the application and consult the operation and maintenance manual before starting to work with the PM200.